Would you mind 5 minutes more? Maybe if you have any questions, you can shoot. Otherwise, I'll ask questions. Try. No, not really. There's not much to say. That's probably a reason why I'm here. Any questions from your side, Rochelle?
Just in regards to the recycling, could it be argued that the higher recycling rates in Sweden and Germany is because, particularly for cans and bottles, the ability to recycle and the deposit scheme is extremely accessible?
It may well be part of it, yes. And I remember the days in Australia where you could return glass screw bottles, for example, if you said the fact that my main source of income to the age of 10, scrambled around football grounds or something. South Australia, I believe, still has it, and I've heard recent discussion about bringing it back. That again is market liberals don't like that kind of policy because it seems an impossible business. Small business owners, like the milk bars we used to go to, they didn't like to turn up with a bunch of empties. It's amazing that they want less than more volumes from them. So I think that may well be a factor.
Because I know, particularly in Sweden and Germany, I lived in Sweden for 12 months, they're recycling depots at the supermarket, and you get a slip that's then scanned at the register that has the amount of that you return.
So it's similar to the Northern Territory in South Australia. We've got 10 cents return.
But also too, because they live in apartment buildings, their recycling is free.
Move on to another question.
So it's about regulations.
So you want to ask?
Yeah, I also stayed in Sweden for a bit. I know that education's free for universities. Is that the same with like private schools and stuff like that?
Well, I think there are some private schools in Sweden. One thing we need to remember about Australia, Australia is actually extremely unusual in having private schools get so much government money. It really is unusual. It's to do with Australia's political history. It's to do with the fact that in the 1950s, when the Labor Party split and the conservative, Catholic, anti-communist faction broke away, that group was called the Democratic Labor Party, then effectively lobbied the Liberal government to give money to Catholic schools in return for the political support from the Democratic Labor Party. They entrenched the form of state government system to private schools. Now, not many people now would begrudge poor Catholic schools getting a portion of government money, but we're talking about the elite private schools. We're talking about Scots College, Melbourne Grammar, and so on. And of course, we know about the Gonski report in Australia. Well, if you look at the Gonski report, if you get an electronic copy of the Gonski report, you type in the word Finland, you get quite a few references, because the Gonski report is an attempt to try and turn that back. Australia's history, the high reliance on private schools and inequality that creates and reproduces. So I think it's actually Australia that is different from the rest of the world in that respect, rather than the Nordic countries necessarily being that different in terms of the government money for private schools.
I would say education is free in Spain, and in all the southern countries as far as I know. Not in Britain. How are our private schools?
We've still got quite a few old grammar schools, but it's still the exception.
It's the exception.
That's one of the things that surprised me a lot.
Yes, I believe grammar schools were mostly abolished in Britain in the late 1960s by the Labor government and for a comprehensive type school. But there's still, of course, the posh, like I'm talking about Eton and Harrow and Rugby and some of these. But they're private schools, as far as I know, they don't get government money.
No.
They rely on the fees of the wealthy parents. Many of them are lords and knights and do fox hunting and things like that.
It's might be on the scope a little bit, but what sort of things would Australia need to do to make teaching and those sorts of things more popular or seen with higher regard?
It's a good question. Well, I think raising the entry requirements would be a start. I mean, there's a real concern now that the ATAR to get into teaching is dropping below 50%. So you can fail secondary school and become a teacher. Now, that seems to be a bit odd. You want people teaching next round of kids who couldn't pass school themselves. It seems to do with this, well, I mean, valuing is one thing, now salary is another, of course. Salary and esteem. One of the interesting things about Finland, though, is that the salary doesn't seem to be significantly higher for teachers. The prestige is more in the the nature of the role, there seems to be more prospects for career progression. One of the dilemmas for teaching is that people become teachers, they enjoy it for a few years, then they leave. And the only way to get more career advancement is actually to become a principal or to become a bureaucrat, to move into school administration. That may be a problem. There are a couple of things, but it's a really good question. You might want to look at gone through, but also bodies like the Australian Education Union, what they're trying to do in that respect.
I'll ask the last question, just to bring you back to what we were discussing before. So we're talking about how policies are made at the supernatural level. And now we've heard about the vast disparity between national policies and the national outcomes in these different countries, specifically on social issues. But you can imagine that these differences exist to a great. This is maybe an extreme case in terms of policy fields where strategies and outcomes are so different. So my question to you is, what role does the EU play, or can it play, in maybe drawing lessons from the best performance and in these areas, in your activities?
Well, I think the type of work the EU does with research, with the EU centres, comparisons, along with bodies like the OECD and the United Nations Children's Fund, all helps to disseminate knowledge of better practices and alternatives. And I guess while we can look at these disparities now, they may be less than what they used to be pre the EU. And we know the EU has certainly helped some countries like Portugal and Ireland become less poor, for example. We know that for a fact. So you can do a historical comparison. We're in the stage of progressing and ironing out some of these differences. But I guess the problem for the EU, especially with expansion, is it trying to do too much? Is it trying to be a common organisation for countries that just don't have enough in common? Is the problem with the euro currency perhaps a symptom of that? I wonder about it. I'm a supporter of Europe and the EU, but I wonder sometimes whether it's trying to do too many things to too many different